A wealthy CEO discovers a homeless young woman giving away her only meal to a frightened little boy. What happens next is unbelievable. Most people would have walked past without noticing. Some would have shaken their heads. Others would have assumed she was just another homeless person asking for attention. But one man stopped. He stood frozen on the sidewalk as he watched a young woman, whose own clothes were worn thin by years of hardship, kneel beside a hungry child she had never met. Without hesitation, she handed him the sandwich she had spent her last $5 to buy. She smiled as if she hadn't just given away the only food she would eat that day. The billionaire couldn't explain why that single moment refused to leave his mind. He had spent decades building companies worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Yet nothing he had accomplished moved him as deeply as watching someone with nothing choose kindness over survival. He had no idea that this stranger's compassion would soon change both of their lives forever. Every morning before sunrise, 26-year-old Emma Carter folded the blanket she'd slept under behind the old community library. She always made sure no one saw where she rested. She believed everyone deserved dignity, even if life had stolen almost everything else. The morning air was cold enough to sting her fingers as she packed her backpack. Inside were only a few possessions: an old notebook, a worn sweater, a framed photograph of her parents, and a small sketchbook held together with rubber bands. That sketchbook was her greatest treasure. Whenever life became unbearable, Emma drew. She sketched faces she'd seen on buses, children laughing in parks, old couples holding hands, birds perched on telephone wires. She captured hope the way other people captured memories. Years earlier, Emma had dreamed of becoming an illustrator. She'd earned a scholarship to art school. But life had rewritten every plan. Her father passed away after a long illness. Medical bills consumed everything. Her mother worked herself to exhaustion trying to keep them afloat. Then she became sick too. Within 2 years, Emma had buried both parents. Debt followed grief. Eventually, eviction followed debt. She never blamed anyone. She simply kept moving forward. Each morning, she helped clean the neighborhood park before city workers arrived. Nobody paid her. She just couldn't bear seeing trash scattered where children played. Afterward, she visited the local shelter, helping elderly residents carry groceries or reading stories to children while parents searched for jobs. The volunteers often asked why she gave so much when she needed help herself. Emma always answered with the same quiet smile. Kindness isn't something you save until you're rich. One rainy afternoon, she found a lost wallet filled with cash. Enough cash to feed herself for months. No identification was visible at first. She could have disappeared. Nobody would have known. Instead, she searched for hours until she located the owner. An elderly widower broke into tears when she returned it. "My late wife's wedding ring was inside," he whispered. "I thought I'd lost the last piece of her." Emma simply smiled. "I'm glad it found its way home." She refused the reward he offered. "I already have what I need." The old man looked confused. "You have almost nothing." Emma looked toward the cloudy sky. "I still have my heart." Word spread quietly around the neighborhood. People who worked nearby began recognizing her. The baker sometimes gave her yesterday's bread. A florist handed her flowers that couldn't be sold. Children waved whenever they saw her drawing with sidewalk chalk outside the library. Despite everything she'd lost, Emma somehow made everyone around her feel richer. But no one knew she secretly skipped meals almost every day. She preferred watching someone else smile. That afternoon, after collecting enough coins from helping shoppers carry groceries, Emma walked into a small corner cafe. She counted every coin twice. $5. Exactly enough for one sandwich. She thanked the cashier with genuine excitement. It had been nearly 2 days since she'd eaten a proper meal. She stepped outside holding the warm paper bag close to her chest. The smell alone made her stomach ache. Then she heard quiet crying. Near the bus stop sat a little boy no older than 7. His clothes were soaked from the rain. His eyes searched every passing face. Emma slowly approached. "Are you okay?" The boy wiped his tears. "I got separated from my grandma, and I'm really hungry." Emma looked at the sandwich, then at the boy. There wasn't even a moment of hesitation. She knelt beside him. "I think this belongs to you." The little boy stared in disbelief. "But what about you?" Emma laughed softly. "I've had plenty of smiles today." She handed him the sandwich. As he took the first bite, relief spread across his face. Emma's stomach growled loudly. She ignored it. She simply sat beside him until police officers located his grandmother minutes later. Across the street, standing beside a sleek black luxury car, a man wearing an expensive tailored coat had witnessed every second. He wasn't looking at his phone anymore. He wasn't thinking about the billion-dollar meeting he was about to attend. He couldn't stop staring at the woman who had just sacrificed her only meal for a complete stranger. And for the first time in years, Nathan Reynolds questioned whether success had blinded him to what truly mattered. Before we continue with this incredible journey, I spent countless hours researching and crafting this story to bring you something truly meaningful. If stories like this touch your heart, and you want to see more acts of kindness that restore faith in humanity, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. It means the world to me and helps these important stories reach others who need to hear them. Now, let's see what happens next. Have you ever witnessed an act of kindness that completely changed your perspective? Share your story in the comments below. Nathan Reynolds couldn't explain why he was still standing there. His driver had already opened the car door twice. "Sir, the board meeting starts in 20 minutes. Nathan barely heard him. Instead, he watched the young woman smile warmly as the little boy's grandmother rushed over, wrapping him in her arms while thanking everyone around her. Emma quietly stood up. She didn't wait for praise. She didn't tell anyone she had given away her only meal. She simply adjusted the straps of her worn backpack and began walking away as though nothing extraordinary had happened. Nathan frowned. Most people wanted recognition. She seemed determined to avoid it. Something about that unsettled him. "Cancel the meeting." His assistant blinked. "Sir, you heard me. The investors flew in from 3 countries. They can wait." Without another word, Nathan crossed the busy street. Emma had already reached the park entrance when she heard footsteps behind her. "Excuse me." She turned. Standing before her was one of the wealthiest men in the city. Of course, she didn't recognize him. To Emma, he was simply another well-dressed stranger. "Yes." Nathan hesitated. For someone who negotiated billion-dollar contracts without breaking a sweat, speaking now felt strangely difficult. I saw what you did." Emma looked confused. "What do you mean?" "The little boy." She smiled. "Oh, you gave him your lunch. He needed it more." Nathan searched her face. There wasn't the slightest hint of regret. "Weren't you hungry?" Emma laughed softly. "Hungry people recover. Scared children remember." That sentence hit Nathan harder than he expected. For a moment, he couldn't find words. Finally, he said, "May I buy you another sandwich?" Emma politely shook her head. "That's kind of you, but I'll be all right." "I insist. You don't owe me anything. I'm not trying to repay you." "Then why?" Nathan looked around the park before answering. "Because watching what you did reminded me that I've been rushing through life without seeing people." Emma studied him carefully. There was something sincere in his voice. No arrogance. No pity. Just honesty. "All right," she finally said with a small smile. "But only if you'll let me choose somewhere inexpensive." Nathan chuckled. "Deal." They walked together to a modest family cafe a few blocks away. Nathan noticed that Emma greeted almost everyone they passed. The newspaper vendor, the crossing guard, an elderly woman feeding pigeons, a street musician. Each person smiled back as though seeing an old friend. Inside the cafe, Emma ordered the least expensive meal on the menu. Nathan raised an eyebrow. "You can order anything. This is enough. You don't have to worry about the price." "I know." "Then why?" She smiled. "My appetite hasn't become expensive." Nathan couldn't help smiling back. It had been months since a conversation felt this effortless. As they waited for their food, he glanced toward the sketchbook sticking out of her backpack. "You draw?" Emma quickly pulled it closer. "Oh, just a little." "May I see?" She hesitated. Most people dismissed her artwork as a hobby. Still, something told her this stranger wasn't asking out of politeness. She slowly handed him the sketchbook. Nathan opened the first page, then the second, then another. His expression changed completely. Every drawing seemed alive. A homeless veteran staring into the distance. A little girl chasing soap bubbles. An exhausted nurse sleeping on a bus. An old couple dancing in the rain. The emotions were astonishing. Each sketch captured something deeper than appearances. Nathan turned another page. "This is incredible." Emma looked down. "It's just practice." "No, it's art." She shrugged. "I used to dream about becoming an illustrator." "What happened?" "Life." Just one word. Yet it carried years of pain. Nathan didn't push further. Instead, he quietly asked, "Do you still dream about it?" Emma looked out the cafe window. Dreams don't disappear. They just become quieter. The waitress placed their meals on the table. Emma closed her eyes briefly before taking her first bite. Nathan noticed how slowly she ate, almost as if she wanted every mouthful to last. He realized then just how hungry she'd been. His heart sank. Trying to change the subject, he asked, "If you could draw anything in the world, what would it be?" Emma smiled. "Hope." He laughed gently. "I don't think that's an easy thing to draw." "It isn't. But you can see it." "Where?" "In people who choose kindness when life hasn't been kind to them." Nathan stared at her. For years, business magazines had called him visionary. Investors admired his strategy. Employees respected his leadership. Yet this young woman, with no home and almost no possessions, seemed to understand success better than he did. As they finished eating, Nathan reached into his wallet. Emma immediately spoke. "Please don't." He paused. "I wasn't going to hand you money." She looked relieved. "I've learned something." "What's that?" "People deserve opportunities, not charity." Emma nodded. "I agree." Nathan smiled. "Then let me ask you something." "What is it?" "Would you be willing to let me visit the community center where you volunteer?" Emma looked genuinely surprised. "Why?" "Because I think there are people there I need to meet." She tilted her head. "You don't even know me." "No. But I know what I saw today." And sometimes one moment tells you everything about a person's character. For the first time in a very long while, Emma felt someone was seeing her instead of simply noticing her circumstances. As they stepped outside the cafe, an elderly man pushing a broken shopping cart struggled to lift a heavy box onto the sidewalk. Without thinking, Emma hurried over. "Here, let me help." Nathan watched as she lifted one side of the box, smiling and chatting with the man as though helping him was the most natural thing in the world. The elderly man thanked her repeatedly. She simply replied, "Someday you'll help someone else." Nathan stood silently. He had intended to buy one stranger a meal. Instead, he was beginning to realize that she had been feeding something much deeper, a starving sense of compassion that he hadn't known he had lost. Neither of them realized that someone across the street had been watching their entire conversation. A local blogger had recognized Nathan immediately. She snapped several photos of the billionaire sitting in a tiny cafe with a homeless woman. Within hours, those pictures would spread across social media. Some people would celebrate what they believed was an inspiring moment. Others would accuse Nathan of staging it for publicity. And the unexpected attention was about to test a friendship that had only just begun. By sunrise the next morning, the photographs were everywhere. Billionaire CEO spotted having lunch with homeless woman. Some headlines praised Nathan Reynolds. Others mocked him. A calculated publicity stunt. Another billionaire trying to repair his image. How long before he forgets her? Millions of people who had never met either of them suddenly had opinions. Nathan sat in his office, scrolling through hundreds of comments. His public relations director walked in carrying a tablet. "We have a problem." Nathan looked up. "I don't see one." "The internet thinks you're using a homeless woman for attention." "I know. We should release a statement." Nathan set his phone down. "No. No. If I have to explain why I shared a meal with someone, then the explanation won't matter." The PR director sighed. "Our investors are concerned." Nathan smiled faintly. "They're concerned about headlines. I'm concerned about people." Meanwhile, Emma knew nothing about the online storm. She was helping children paint a mural on the wall of the neighborhood community center. The room echoed with laughter. "Miss Emma," little Sophie shouted. "My tree looks funny." Emma laughed. "Funny trees are the best kind." "Why?" "They remind us that growing doesn't have to look perfect." The children giggled before dipping their brushes back into bright colors. For a few precious hours, Emma forgot about hunger, homelessness, and uncertainty. Here, she wasn't someone people pitied. She was simply Miss Emma, the woman who encouraged every child to believe they could create something beautiful. Just before noon, Nathan arrived carrying several boxes of art supplies. Paint, brushes, canvas, colored pencils, sketchbooks. The children's eyes lit up. Emma's jaw dropped. "You bought all this?" Nathan smiled. "I figured artists should have proper tools." The children surrounded the boxes with excited squeals. One little boy hugged Nathan around the waist. "Thank you, mister." Nathan laughed. "I think I'm the lucky one." Watching their joy made him feel lighter than closing any business deal ever had. Emma walked over quietly. "You didn't have to do this." "I know." "Then why did you?" Nathan looked around the room. Because talent shouldn't depend on someone's bank account. Emma smiled. That's something my father used to say. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Sometimes silence carried more meaning than words. Over the next several weeks, Nathan visited regularly. Not with cameras, not with reporters, just himself. He helped repaint classrooms, read stories to children, fixed broken shelves, even served meals during the shelter's evening dinners. People in expensive suits began asking strange questions. Why are you spending so much time there? Nathan answered honestly. Because that's where I remember who I am. Little by little, Emma began trusting him. She told him about art school, about losing her parents, about sleeping behind the library, about pretending she wasn't cold because worrying others made things harder. Nathan listened without interrupting. Not once did he offer pity, only respect. One afternoon he asked gently, "Why didn't you ever ask anyone for help?" Emma stared at her sketchbook. "I did." Nathan waited. "When my mom got sick." She swallowed hard. "I filled out applications. I called charities. I begged landlords for more time. And eventually people stopped returning my calls." Nathan lowered his eyes. There was no answer that could erase years of disappointment. "I'm sorry." Emma gave a small smile. "I stopped expecting people to rescue me. So I decided I'd rescue whatever pieces of hope I could." Nathan felt his throat tighten. He had built companies solving complicated business problems. Yet society had failed someone this remarkable. A week later, Nathan invited Emma to visit his company's headquarters. She almost declined. "I don't belong in places like that." Nathan smiled. "You belong anywhere your character takes you." Reluctantly, she agreed. Employees whispered as she entered the gleaming glass building wearing the cleanest clothes she owned. Some smiled warmly. Others stared. A few assumed she was there to clean. Emma noticed every glance, but kept walking. Nathan personally greeted her in the lobby. "Ready?" She nodded nervously. He introduced her to members of his creative department. They looked through her sketchbook. One designer stopped turning pages. "Wait." He looked closer. "You drew these?" Emma nodded. "This perspective." Another artist leaned over. "The emotion," their department director quietly said. "I've interviewed professionals with less talent than this." Emma blinked. "You mean that?" "I absolutely do." For the first time in years, someone wasn't complimenting her out of kindness. They were recognizing her ability. As hope slowly returned to her heart, another obstacle appeared. Nathan's board of directors requested an emergency meeting. One member spoke bluntly. "Your involvement with this woman is becoming a distraction." Another added, "The media keeps asking questions." A third slid financial reports across the table. "Our shareholders expect stability." Nathan remained calm. "So your concern is that compassion looks bad for business?" "It's about perception." "No," Nathan replied firmly. "It's about priorities." One board member folded his arms. "You need to distance yourself." Nathan's answer came without hesitation. "I won't. You could lose investor confidence. I've lost enough things chasing profit. I'm not losing my principles too." News of the disagreement quietly spread throughout the company. Some executives sided with the board. Others admired Nathan's courage. Outside the corporate world, Emma faced her own battle. Someone recognized her from the viral photos. As she walked into a grocery store, two strangers whispered loudly enough for her to hear. "She's probably taking advantage of him. I heard she's after his money." Emma froze. The words cut deeper than she expected. She left her basket behind and walked out without buying anything. That evening, Nathan found her sitting alone outside the library. She didn't look up when he approached. "I think maybe everyone was right." "About what?" "I don't belong in your world." Nathan sat beside her. "Our worlds were never the problem." She looked at him with tear-filled eyes. "Then what is?" "The idea that kindness always has a hidden motive." Emma wiped away a tear. "I don't want your reputation ruined because of me." Nathan smiled gently. "My reputation isn't built on what strangers post online. It's built on the choices I make." She shook her head. "I'm scared." "Of what?" "That everyone who finally believes in me will disappear." Nathan looked toward the setting sun before answering. "Emma, the easiest promise to make is I'll never leave. So I won't say that." She looked at him, confused. "I'll say something better." "What?" "As long as I'm able, I'll keep showing up." Those 4 words settled deep inside her heart. Not grand promises, not dramatic speeches, just quiet commitment. But neither of them knew that the greatest challenge was still ahead. 2 days later, the city posted an official notice behind the library. The area where Emma and several other homeless people had been sleeping would be permanently closed for redevelopment. Everyone had 72 hours to leave. For Emma, it wasn't just the loss of a sleeping place. It was the loss of the last fragile sense of stability she had left. And this time, kindness alone might not be enough. Emma stood silently, staring at the bright orange notice taped to the brick wall behind the library. Property closed. All unauthorized occupants must vacate within 72 hours. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. Around her, people hurriedly packed the few belongings they owned into shopping carts, old suitcases, and backpacks. Some argued. Some cried. Others simply accepted another painful chapter in lives that had already known too much uncertainty. Emma picked up her sketchbook and slipped it into her backpack. Everything else could be replaced. Not that. When Nathan arrived later that afternoon, he immediately sensed something was wrong. The usual warmth in Emma's smile was gone. Instead, she was helping an elderly homeless veteran fold blankets into a cart. Nathan read the notice. His expression hardened. When did this happen? This morning. And where is everyone supposed to go? Emma shrugged. I don't think anyone knows. Nathan looked around. Nearly 30 people would lose the only place they had managed to call home. This isn't right. Emma sighed softly. Sometimes life isn't. Nathan turned to her. No, this isn't life. It's a problem. And problems can be solved. That evening, instead of returning to his penthouse, Nathan called everyone he knew. Housing organizations, local churches, community leaders, business owners, friends, architects, even competitors. He wasn't asking for donations. He was asking for partnership. If we can build office towers in 6 months, he told them, we can surely build hope faster than bureaucracy. Some politely declined. Others hesitated. But many remembered the viral story that had introduced them to Emma. One by one, they agreed to help. By the next morning, volunteers began arriving. Construction companies donated materials. Furniture stores offered beds. Restaurants promised meals. Doctors volunteered free medical checkups. Artists organized fundraising exhibitions. College students painted walls. Retired electricians fixed wiring. It seemed as though one act of kindness had awakened hundreds more. Emma stood in disbelief. I don't understand. Nathan smiled. You started this. No, I didn't. You gave away a sandwich. He looked around at the growing crowd. The rest is simply kindness refusing to stop. Within weeks, an abandoned community building on the edge of town had been completely transformed. Fresh paint covered cracked walls. Bright windows replaced broken glass. Small apartments were furnished with real beds. There was a shared kitchen, a library, an art room, a garden. Most importantly, there was dignity. No one called it a shelter. The sign outside simply read, The New Beginning Center. Emma cried the first time she walked through the front doors. I've never had my own room before. Nathan quietly handed her a small key. This one's yours. Her hands trembled. She stared at the key for several seconds before whispering, I don't know how to thank you. Nathan smiled gently. You already did. The day you reminded me what kindness looks like. Life slowly began changing in ways Emma had never dared imagine. With a stable place to live, she finally had time to focus on her art again. Nathan introduced her portfolio, not as a favor, but because it deserved to be seen, to several respected publishers and design agencies. One illustration, a simple drawing of a little boy sharing his umbrella with a stray dog, caught the attention of a children's book author. Then another. Soon, Emma was illustrating entire books. Her gentle, emotional artwork touched thousands of families. Parents wrote letters saying her illustrations helped children understand compassion. Teachers used her books in classrooms. Libraries invited her to speak. The young woman who once slept behind one of those libraries was now welcomed through their front doors as a celebrated guest. Months later, Emma stood in an art gallery preparing for her very first public exhibition. The walls were covered with the drawings she had created during the hardest years of her life. Every sketch told a story, not of poverty, but of resilience, not of despair, but of hope. Nathan arrived quietly, standing near the back of the room. He watched visitors pause in front of one particular drawing. It showed a young woman handing a sandwich to a frightened little boy. A small plaque beneath it read, Kindness costs less than fear, but changes far more. People wiped away tears as they read it. An elderly woman approached Emma. "Your art reminds me that goodness still exists." Emma smiled. "So does yours." The woman looked puzzled. "You came here today. Sometimes showing up is kindness too." Nathan smiled to himself. Those words sounded familiar. As the evening drew to a close, the gallery director stepped onto the stage. "We're proud to announce that every piece in tonight's exhibition has been sold." The audience erupted into applause. Emma stood frozen. She couldn't believe it. Years of quiet sketches, drawn on park benches and library steps, had finally found their place in the world. Then came the biggest surprise. Nathan walked toward the stage carrying a small envelope. "I have one more announcement." The room became silent. He handed the envelope to Emma. Inside was a framed document. She looked at it in confusion, then gasped. It was the deed to a new community art center. Her name appeared as its director. I can't accept this." Nathan smiled. "Actually, you already have. It's yours because you've earned it." The room rose to its feet. Many were crying openly. Emma hugged Nathan tightly. "You changed my life." He gently shook his head. "No, you changed mine first." A year later, children filled the art center every afternoon. Some came from wealthy families. Others came from difficult circumstances. Inside those walls, it didn't matter. Emma taught every child the same lesson. Talent grows where kindness lives. One rainy evening, after class ended, Emma noticed a frightened teenage girl sitting alone outside with an old backpack and nowhere to go. The girl looked exactly as Emma once had. Cold, exhausted, invisible. Emma walked over and sat beside her. "Hi." The girl looked down. "I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to bother anyone." Emma smiled warmly. "You're not bothering me." She reached into her bag and handed the girl a freshly wrapped sandwich. "I think this belongs to you." The girl stared in disbelief. "But what about you?" Emma smiled through tears. "I've already been fed." As Nathan watched from the doorway, he realized he was witnessing the same moment that had changed his own life. Only this time, Emma was the one changing someone else's future. One simple act of kindness had come full circle, and now its ripple would continue long after either of them was gone. This story shows how one act of kindness can change everything. What's one way you could make a difference in someone's life today? Challenge yourself and share your commitment in the comments. A few years later, the story that had once spread across social media for all the wrong reasons had become something much greater than anyone could have imagined. People no longer remembered the headlines accusing Nathan Reynolds of staging a publicity stunt. They remembered the lives that had been changed. The New Beginning Center had grown from one renovated building into 3 community homes across the city. Families who had once lived in cars now had safe places to sleep. Veterans received counseling and job placement. Single parents found affordable childcare while they rebuilt their lives. Young adults aging out of foster care discovered mentors who believed in them. Every hallway echoed with laughter instead of loneliness. The walls were covered with artwork created by people who had once believed they had nothing worth sharing. At the entrance of every building hung the same simple quote: "Kindness begins where judgment ends." Emma's Art Center became one of the busiest places in the community. Every Saturday morning, children lined up before the doors even opened. Some came carrying expensive sketchbooks. Others brought loose sheets of notebook paper. Emma treated every artist exactly the same. She still remembered what it felt like to think your circumstances defined your future. Whenever a new student apologized for not having the best supplies, Emma would kneel beside them and smile. The greatest masterpieces don't begin with perfect tools. They begin with hopeful hearts. Many of her former students earned scholarships to study art, architecture, animation, and design. Some became teachers themselves. Others illustrated children's books inspired by the same compassion Emma had shown them. Every graduation invitation she received became another reminder that kindness keeps multiplying long after the original act is forgotten. Nathan's life changed just as dramatically. His company remained successful, but people noticed something different about its culture. Employee volunteer programs became part of every department. Paid community service days were introduced. Scholarships were created for talented students facing financial hardship. Unused office spaces were converted into training centers for people rebuilding their careers. When business leaders asked Nathan why profits hadn't suffered despite all these changes, he smiled. They didn't survive in spite of kindness. They grew because of it. His words inspired other companies to rethink how success should be measured. One afternoon, Nathan received an unexpected visitor. It was the little boy Emma had given her sandwich to years earlier. Only he wasn't little anymore. He was now a confident teenager carrying a neatly wrapped package. "My grandmother asked me to give you this." Nathan smiled. "You remember me?" "I could never forget." The teenager laughed. "I didn't understand it back then. But Grandma told me that one meal probably saved more than my stomach. It saved my faith in people." Nathan carefully opened the package. Inside was a framed photograph. It showed Emma standing between Nathan and dozens of smiling children outside the art center. Across the bottom, someone had written in elegant handwriting, "The richest people are those who leave others better than they found them." Nathan stared at the photograph for several moments before quietly saying, "I'll treasure this forever." Meanwhile, Emma never forgot where her journey had begun. Every Friday evening, after finishing her classes, she walked to the same neighborhood where she had once slept behind the library. She carried a backpack, not because she had nowhere to live anymore, but because it was filled with sandwiches, bottled water, warm socks, blankets, hygiene kits, and small sketchbooks. She never announced her visits. There were no cameras, no interviews, no speeches. She simply sat with people. She listened to their stories. She remembered their names. Sometimes she drew quick portraits for children whose families couldn't afford photographs. Sometimes she simply shared a meal. One cold winter night, a volunteer asked her, "Why do you keep coming back here?" Emma looked around the familiar streets. "Because someone once saw me when everyone else walked past. I never want anyone here to feel invisible again." The volunteer nodded quietly. That answer stayed with him for years. Eventually, schools began inviting Emma and Nathan to speak together. Students expected dramatic success stories. Instead, they heard something much simpler. Emma would hold up the old sketchbook she had carried through her hardest days. Its pages were worn. Its corners were bent. But she never replaced it. "This reminds me," she would tell the audience, "that your greatest gift can survive your greatest struggle." Nathan would then hold up the key to his office. "The world taught me that this opened important doors." He smiled toward Emma. "She taught me that the most important doors open inside the human heart." The audience always applauded. But the loudest applause came after the speeches ended. That was when students lined up, not for autographs, but to ask how they could volunteer at shelters, tutor younger children, donate art supplies, or simply become kinder to the people around them. That was the real victory. Not fame, not wealth, not recognition, but action. Because every great change begins with one small decision, one conversation, one helping hand, one shared meal, one moment when someone chooses compassion instead of convenience. Although this story is fictional, its message is inspired by the countless real acts of kindness that happen every day around the world. Most of them never make the news. They happen quietly, in neighborhoods, schools, hospitals, shelters, workplaces, and homes, when ordinary people decide that another person's struggle matters. The truth is, you don't need millions of dollars to change a life. You don't need a famous name. You don't need perfect timing. Sometimes all it takes is noticing the person everyone else overlooks. A kind word to someone who's discouraged. A meal for someone who's hungry. Time spent listening to someone who feels forgotten. Encouragement for someone who's about to give up. Those moments may seem small to you, but to the person receiving them, they can become the turning point that changes everything. And perhaps the most beautiful part of kindness is this: it never truly ends. It travels from one heart to another, from one family to another, from one generation to another. Just as Emma's single sandwich inspired Nathan, Nathan's decision inspired a community, and that community inspired countless others to believe that hope is still alive. Who knows? The next ripple of kindness might begin with you. Stories like this remind us that extraordinary kindness exists all around us. If this touched your heart, please like this video. It helps more people discover these inspiring stories. Subscribe for more tales of human kindness that will restore your faith in humanity. And most importantly, look for opportunities in your own life to be someone's unexpected blessing. What act of kindness will you perform this week? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and remember, you have the power to change someone's entire world. Until next time, take care of one another, because the smallest act of kindness may become the greatest chapter in someone else's story.